The world is full of tours. But you don't choose a Toyota truck to follow the beaten path. You choose it to find the places in between. The detours, where each adventure pulls you toward the next. And wrong turns turn out right. So why would you ever take a tour when you could take a detour? Toyota Trucks.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Wondery.
Human remains detection. It's referred to as HRD. Now, you've probably heard of cadaver dogs, and guess what? That's what they do. It's a big and really kind of a heavy name, don't you think? Today, Dr. Lisa Briggs, she joins me. She's a professor of criminology and criminal justice at Western Carolina University. She's also the director of the disaster management program. She's the director of the Cadaver program at WCU, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Not only does she train, she deploys to disasters all over the country, as well as working with all branches of law enforcement to locate human remains in a variety of scenarios. Now, have you ever seen law enforcement on the water with a dog in their boat while they're searching for something? Did you ever wonder how that dog could help since it stayed in the boat and never got wet? Well, we talk about that and a bunch of other different scenarios that these amazing dogs can help while they're searching, and so much more. We also talk about the dangers of people self-deploying when someone thinks, again, I'm going to say it again, thinks their dog can detect, but they're not really properly trained. There's so much skill involved, and Lisa takes us through all the steps, step by step. There's a lot here, and we cover so much. So, get ready. This is a really, really good one.
For real, 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 for real. Got a bunch of furry friends and I love them all the same. I'm an animal lover, veterinarian is the name. Let's share some pet stories from heartwarming to strange, losses and gains, from wacky to insane. For real. You're now tuned in to For Real with your host, Mark Kyle.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the For Real podcast. Today I have a very special guest. We're really lucky to have her, Dr. Lisa Briggs. Lisa, welcome to the show, and I'm so glad we're getting to do this one.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share about what our wonderful canines can do.
Well, first of all, you and I have had an opportunity to talk several times, and I know what such a nice person you are, so that always makes it easier for me. But I'm really excited for this subject for so many different reasons. What you do is so important and for families and all kinds of things, and I really like that. But before we dig into our subject today, I'm going to dig into you, also the subject. Talk a little bit about you, your background, how you got to where you were, education, all that kind of stuff. You can kind of just start where you want to do, and let's kind of do your journey and then get into cadaver dogs.
Oh gosh, well the journey's been quite long, so I'll try to make it brief. But basically, as far as the tail end of it, I direct the emergency and disaster management programs at Western Carolina University, and I direct the, we call it Human Remains Recovery Canine Training Program. We have a forensic osteology research station, which, is a donor facility, and that really facilitates the ability to train our dogs on what we need to train them on so that they can be most effective in the field. I also wear a lot of hats. I'm very fortunate that I do get the opportunity quite often to try to make a little difference in other people's lives and hopefully reduce their suffering just a little bit with the use of HRD, human remains detection canines. And we respond to a lot of cases throughout the country and even abroad. My heart lies primarily with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I'm one of 4 or 5, they call us search directors or search specialists with the National Center. And you can imagine being a parent and losing your child is hard enough, but not having that child return home or know what happens to them is a whole different level of pain. And also, I'm on a sheriff's missing persons unit and also credentialed with Department of Homeland Security. It's a FEMA reunification team that primarily focuses on just reuniting children with parents during times of disaster. And those actually can be living children as well as deceased children. So that's kind of where I'm at now, that facilitates not only my ability to train a lot, but my own ability to deploy on cases and help law enforcement. I only deploy when requested by law enforcement, so I want to state that, kind of up front, because I want to come in at the request of law enforcement, and emergency managers and fire can also request us. I'm a criminologist, I guess I hadn't even calculated it up, Mark, 26 years with, I have a master's in public affairs, a master's in science, and a PhD in criminology, with the last 12 years being focused in forensic criminology. And I feel very blessed, Mark, to do what I do. Sometimes people ask me, how I can do the hard work, and the answer is because I can.
Right.
I've been blessed with the avenues to be able to facilitate the work, and it's an honor, to be able to live. And I know that sounds like a mantra or whatever, but when you've helped somebody like this, that feeling that gets in your heart, it keeps you moving forward.
Yeah, rewarding. So, but have you always been an animal person, so I'm just curious of how you got there. So I know your criminology. So was that kind of what your plan was, or did you always want to do something with animals and then?
Oh no, yeah, I always wanted to do something with animals. I've always had dogs, cats, snakes, groundhogs, skunks. I mean, I have to say, whatever has needed.
Mrs. Doolittle.
Yeah, whatever's needed a home. It's kind of had a place at my home when it needed it. But what really started this is I'm not as much so more. I do mostly flat water now, but I was a kayaker, a hiker, still am an avid hiker, and was originally trying to figure out how to use those assets of being a kayaker, being a hiker, and having, a love for dogs and, knowing the potential that they could do. It all came together in the universe, and I started live search at first, and then one thing kind of fell into another, where I was positioned with my background, law enforcement background, criminal justice, and then being an educator and being at a facility that has a donor, being at a university that has a donor facility. That all came together in time that just opened up what I guess, if I say I'm doing what I feel like I was supposed to be doing all along, and intend to finish this way. And when my legs won't take me anymore, I have a backup plan to strictly focus on water recovery. And, we do quite a bit of water recovery now. So that's my long-term plan, Mark. The problem is I'm outliving some of my dogs, of course. So that's been something hard to take, because our working dogs, I do have a Belgian Malinois that actually is 17 years old. He's been retired for a while. I don't think that boy knows that he shouldn't be with us still. So, because, most big dogs don't make it that long. But
Is it the Belgian Malinois that do the lifeguards like in Italy and places like that? Isn't it the Belgian Malinois that actually jump out of helicopters and all kinds of crazy stuff, right?
They do. The Belgian Malinois, actually, he was a military dog that, didn't make it in that end. And we've ended up with a few like that we can flip from, from bomb explosive and flip over to cadaver. But that is the dog that you're thinking of. I have four, and I've trained every breed that there is out there, for the cadaver work. But I definitely have my favorite breeds, and I think it kind of depends on everybody. Probably deep down has a favorite breed, when it's all said and done, that probably matches their personality. And, we have to have the dogs that have a really strong work ethic and a hunt drive, play drive, toy drive, that are basically working dogs. And, I was saying a minute ago, unfortunately, when we start seeing them about 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, that's when we have to start thinking about, their retirement days.
Sure.
And we call it having another one in a hopper. So what I like to do is get a pup. I like these old dogs to train up the new dogs. And I believe without a doubt that they can do that, and they can do the positive and the negative. So we have some bad characteristics that one dog can teach another, but overall, I really like to use, the older dogs to help train up the newer pups coming through.
Well, when I want to get into cadaver dogs, but one of the things that when I was doing some of my homework, I think it's maybe a place to start, because you've got the live search, and then you have the cadaver search, and those are two separate dogs generally, right? Most of them are doing one thing and the other ones are doing the other thing, correct?
You're exactly right, Mark, but a lot of people, we call this multi-purpose or single-purpose canines.
Mm-hmm.
I am a huge advocate of a single-purpose canine. Sometimes this can't be done because of, especially like law enforcement, funding. And in some areas, they don't have the resources, to have single purpose dogs. But there are some working breeds, working disciplines that I would say pair together better than others. And so it's something to think about. And, from the standpoint, too, we want all of our, certainly I'm a criminologist by trade, right? So we want all of our cases to be able to stand up in court. And, a defense attorney's job is to try to, get the client to be freed of the charges. So we want to make sure all of our cases hold up. And, I just want a dog that communicates very clearly. And, I did run a dual-purpose dog for a while, and I'm not saying that my dogs, I can't use for live search, because I can, but that's that specialization seems to fare better in my opinion. I mean, for example, we've got some law enforcement agencies that, because of funding, they may have to cross a bite work dog, a patrol dog, with a cadaver dog. And when I have those folks come into my classes, to our classes, I'm always stating what a bad idea I think this is. Because if a cadaver dog was deployed into the forest or into the woods, and it's a patrol dog and it's been trained to do that, sometimes the consequences could end up bad. And I do know of situations that's happened. So, Mark, you have to think about what disciplines you're pairing together.
Sure.
If that makes sense, yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by Preveted, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at PrepVet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
You hear that? That's not just a Toyota truck. That's the sound of no crowds, no alerts, no distractions, and no telling what you'll find next. You know, like a detour. So why would you ever take a tour when you could take a detour? Toyota trucks.
Anyone that has cats knows it's that darn litter box that can be an issue. And let's be honest, they smell really, really bad until now. If you've got cats, Boxy Cat is your new best friend. You never have to smell that stinky litter box again. And let me tell you how. Boxy Pro, as in probiotic, stops the bacteria that causes odors. And never having to smell my litter box again? Hallelujah. Now, Boxy Pro, it keeps it odor-free infinitely. You're still going to need to scoop, but you never have to dump the box out. You just have to top it off. There's no more of that switching brands all the time. I know, because my family uses Boxy, and you should too. So get Boxy at Boxy.com. That's BOXIE.com, and enjoy 30% off using the code FORREAL. That's BOXIE.com/for-real. And get some fresh air back into your home. So let's talk about cadaver dogs. And so one of the questions I was thinking about this is there a breed that's better than another breed? Are there multiple breeds there, but are there ones that are very, I don't know, just jump right into it and through a lot of training, by the way, we won't get into that, but is there a breed that's better than other, or breeds that are better than others?
Well, I definitely think so because, when you think about the olfactory system,
Mm-hmm.
the dog's ability to smell is estimated
Like a hound.
it's estimated 100,000 times better than ours. And the one thing that we know for sure is we have a large need for more science, which I'm hoping to get time. I am publishing a book right now on it, but I'm hoping to get more time to, dedicate to the science of it. But I like an athletic, long-snouted dog. Some of the things that we have to do, and, we may talk about hurricanes, recovery and Hurricane Helene, is some of the situations I had to put those dogs in. I was very grateful that they were very athletic.
Mm-hmm.
And, had a long olfactory system. It's, in my opinion, it just helps, the processing. Now, just 2 weeks ago, I had a pug that somebody brought to one of the classes, and my initial response was, this is the second time they brought him, and I saw some ability in the dog the first time, and then they've been really working hard. And this second time I went, well, dang, I'm wrong about this, because that little flat-nosed dog did an excellent job, but it also has very small legs. So if you're asking it to go up
Limited.
a debris pile, and so you have to think about, what exactly is the work that you want to do. But the biggest thing is, and this hurts people's feelings sometimes. What I don't like seeing is somebody take their beloved pet and they go, oh, I think I'm going to do cadaver work, because they've heard about it and don't really understand that dog might not be cut out for it, and don't really understand the commitment and the accountability and the sacrifice and the training and the professionalism that needs to go into this work. There's amazing volunteers out there that are giving a lot of their time, but, to do this work effectively and to treat people in cases with the respect and the accountability it needs to be treated with, we need the right kind of people and the right kind of dogs. I'm a big fan personally of, and again, I'm going to come back to what fits somebody's personality, because, you need to be able to put up with the pros and cons of that dog. Like a Labrador, great dogs. They're great at what they do. They're often high energy, but I have a hard time slowing a lot of Labradors down. So if I'm wanting to do, casework, cold casework, or, bone recovery, most of the time we have disarticulations, and I need that dog to work slowly, like a vacuum cleaner. I want to start out. I don't want to have to push a dog. I want to be able to harness it back. But if I can never slow a dog down, then that dog's going to be limited to what we call fresh recovery. A body that's in full decomposition, because when it hits the air, the scent, it can hit it. Going smooth, going fastly. But if I'm trying to work a cold case, I need a dog to work like a vacuum cleaner with its nose to the ground. And, it's bone has very little VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So, we need dogs that work slowly. I personally, I love golden retrievers. They fit my personality really well. I've had a huge amount of success with my Goldens. I've had one Golden who I did lose recently, but before she passed, I've got 40 documented case recoveries that she did that can be documented from law enforcement agencies, and I'll never have another dog like her. But we do have Belgian Malinois. I've got an amazing German Shepherd. We've got Dutch Shepherds. And my colleague that I work with a lot, we both deploy together on a lot of cases. He also works for the National Center. We have about every breed between us. So while yes, dogs are certainly capable of smelling, it is those dogs that we like. For example, I have a bird dog that's 7 or 8 generation hunting line. So I got that one out on the West Coast, Wyoming, and that dog, its generation has been bred after generation to hunt. So that working line dog is basically what we're wanting, to do this kind of work. In all the fields of scent work, whatever you're thinking about in scent work, device discovery, drug detection, bomb detection. I mean, the list can go on a bit. Cadaver work is, I think everyone that's in scent work would agree, is the most difficult. And the reason for that is because, like in the drug world, or in, let's say, the explosive world, you may have 6 or 7, chemical compounds that come together that we have to train that dog on. For a human remains detection dog, we have to train them on all the various levels of decomposition of the human body, from early decomposition until fragmented bone, and all the levels in between. And we have guesstimates of how many volatile organic compounds, those are the gases being released, that we think a body goes through. And, the science on it is not concrete, even though many people would like to think that it is. It's guesstimated a couple of hundred to 400, but, we really don't have clear science on that. But what we know is that we have to train these dogs, we call it, just to put into their scent profile. We have to train these dogs on all the levels of decomposition. So unfortunately, what we have in the United States is a lot of people who, quote unquote, claim to be cadaver dog handlers, and they may be training on a pseudocorpse, or they, a fake chemically made odor, or they may be training on the only source that they can get, which is maybe a placenta or fatty tissue or something, and that's not going to be the gamut of what we need these HRD dogs trained on. I mean, when people come to our classes and come here to the university, I'm always saying, how often do you really hunt for placenta, out? So, that's something that people, and even when law enforcement contact, cadaver dog handlers, they need to vet these handlers and to know, exactly what the dog's been trained on. I'm much less concerned with certifications, and there are some certification issues out there in the United States right now, and even abroad, that I'm going to say are not the most ethical or reliable, where just because the dog has a certificate, it means that you want to put your reputation on that dog. And I'm always telling everybody in these classes, if you're not willing to train that dog, and if you're not willing, that if you had your child missing and you only had one dog to deploy, it better be your dog. And if you can't tell me that, then you don't need to deploy it on somebody else's missing child. And, that's how we've got to go into this profession, and this is how we've got to have the accountability for it. And right now, unfortunately, in the United States, we do not, we are relying on volunteers, and oftentimes at the, they may have great intentions and the goodness of their heart, but they have to find a way to support, the craft themselves. And then, we also have some people that might be in it for the wrong reason, and then maybe also some people that don't know what they don't know.
Right.
That they just simply don't know how difficult this work is, and how accountable we have to be. I mean, we've had to make the decision, based on other people's dogs. If they say, yeah, my dog indicated that a child is in that pond, we have no choice but to drain that pond. And, is that person willing to pay the fees, for
Right.
for that pond to be drained? So there's a lot of pressure that if somebody wants to, really be a professional at this, that they've got to understand.
Well, let's dig into this a little bit. First of all, HRD is human remains detection for anybody that's listening. But I want to talk about the science behind it. Again, the worst thing about me is that I learn a little bit, and I have a gazillion questions to ask. So, but I know that based on what I read, is that the dogs can detect almost, I guess, down to 10 feet and all that. But let's talk about.
Mark, I'm gonna caution that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there's if it's on the internet, it must be true, right?
No, it must not be true.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of stuff is perpetuated. And, we've tried to run some, I've personally tried to run some studies here at the university. I mean, I've personally buried bodies and then watched people who claim that they are clandestine grave recovers, this historical grade stuff, walk right over some bodies that we have buried. So, a lot of great things have to come together in the universe to be really successful at those type of cases. But I'm also, and it would take me probably 3 hours to go into depth about this. I'm also one that says if that body's not dug up, then it's, in my opinion, is fraudulent, because, we need to actually, if a dog was to indicate, have state archaeologists or, whoever comes in, and we actually exhume that to verify that that dog was correct. Because when you're talking about, 10 feet and you've got a body under the ground that's decomposed down to nearly nothing or bone, and in some areas has completely gone away, then, I'm gonna share cautionary, suggestions on that. Because if you've got 10 feet and then you've got grass on top of that and you've got leaf foliage on top of that, people need to, before they make real sweeping claims, they need to make sure that body was dug up.
Right, and that's really there.
It was verified. And unfortunately, I know of too many cases where these claims were made and in fact not validated. And I'm always guarding everyone against, you better be careful what you reward that dog on. So if
Right.
someone's saying, oh, there's a clandestine grave there, and they believe somebody, or maybe a GPR, ground penetrating radar, or something suggested there's a void under the earth, and they reward that dog, and they've imprinted it on something other than the odor of human remains, then they've created disaster. What we've done at the facility here, my colleague and I, and I know this might be difficult for some of your audience members to listen to, so I'm going to give a cautionary moment that you might want to edit this out. But, we will bury the bodies and then pipe through, the center mass of the body, and then cap that. so that we know when we're imprinting dogs, at least we think we're imprinting them on the odor of human remains. And I know that we're imprinting them better that method than we would, oh yeah, body's buried over there, so go over there and, talk your dog into an indication and reward it.
Right.
That's just not effective science, and it's not an effective practice. And we see this happening across the United States. So I personally do not want to work. I did it a couple of times, and I've withdrawn from historical grave stuff because I'm not going to reward a dog on what I don't know is for a fact human remains.
Let's get into the basics. So, and regardless if it's 2 feet, 1 feet, or whatever, that doesn't really matter to me. So when a dog is looking for remains, they're really based on, can you walk through how they're finding? It's the gases, the VOCs, I'm guessing, but how they do that, how you train them to do that. And I know that what I read, again, internet, so I'm probably wrong here, but I know that the best way to do it is, as you indicated, is really with real body parts, because animal remains are not the same as humans, so they're not doing that, and how they can really find a human. So kind of just detail that a little bit so people can understand how they actually do it. And that's also, let's talk about water too, because I was shocked about it, but it made sense once I understood what the reason was.
Well, I guess, and one thing I'd like to, share with your audience, because I really do. One reason I agreed to do this is because the love of animals and the love of dogs and the amazement at what they can do, but also the opportunity to share as an educator.
Yeah.
So, and I do go around the country trying to educate law enforcement and others, and also handlers, about how complex this is, because a cadaver dog is not a cadaver dog is not a cadaver dog. So basically what I'm saying there is there will be limited to what you imprint, what you train them on. So what they're imprinted and trained on is what they're going to learn to detect and communicate to you that it has found what you've asked it to find. And so within the discipline of cadaver dogs, you have sub-disciplines, which would be, fresh death, and then various levels of decomp over time, where it's down to bone. And so you've got dogs that, are basically going to air scent to fresh remains, and then they're going to have to really grid search, for disarticulated bone. That's hard to hit, from air scenting. So, we need to be in the right vicinity and have the dogs pretty close for bone that has very low threshold odor. And then, certainly you have water recovery specialization, where the gases are actually lighter than the water. So as the body's decomposing, they're going to surface up. And if we have well-trained cadaver dogs on those gases, then we can be successful. And certainly we can't put them in a 30-acre lake and, go right to it. It's a very time-consuming process. I mean, my colleague and I, we calculated, our training time, and we'll work about every 6 hours negative on a boat to 1 hour hot. Wow. And so what I'm trying to say there is, a lot of these dogs, they go through training or they go through a seminar and they seem, successful because you're setting the dogs up for success. One dog runs behind the other, we're leaving pheromones and toy reward and food reward and everything there. But when you go out for an actual deployment, the reality is most of the time the dogs have to search for a very long time before they're successful. And you can imagine, searching in a lake when you don't have a PLS, a place last known, that, they've got to have a lot of endurance. So we train a lot, through the dog thinking, that it's working just to try to get longevity out of the dog. And then certainly you have burial, which, sometimes that's called clandestine. And that's a whole different, specialization within. We just had a burn course here at the university, which we're gathering a lot of amazing science. We work in conjunction with other departments in alcohol and tobacco, firearms, and, donors have stated when they've donated their body that they would like it used for this type of science. But, burned remains is a whole different aspect of a subdivision within cadaver work. And I'm always saying, and if you look at Western's website, that you can't expect a dog to indicate on that which it has not been trained on. And so if you've trained a dog on fresh dead or you've trained a dog on bone, it's going to be limited to that. It's, if you want to work a fire disaster or, a fire, or even Maui. I was interviewed on CNN and explained to them that you just can't take any dog, and send over to Maui. I mean, they need to have been trained and worked successfully on burned remains. So we host all those divisions we host here at the university. So yes, it's like if you've got hunters listening to your podcast, I'm sure they're going to shake their heads because, they're going to say, yep, it's just a different odor. It's like any raccoon dog or squirrel hunting dog or truffle hunting dog or turtle hunting dog or bear dog. I mean, they are trained on that to which it is, trained to find. And with us, we have to have access to donors, to human remains over time. And, you can start a dog on low threshold like teeth and, build up from there. I'm always telling folks I'd rather see them, if they don't have access to source, I'd rather see them train on human teeth. Of course, that hasn't gone through any cleaning process, rather than placenta or a pseudocorpse. We don't know that one VOC that's lasting throughout time. We've had, and I don't want to hypothesize because I don't want one clip taken from this and going, oh, well, Dr. Briggs thinks yada, yada. But, we've gotten some grants here and I've worked with some amazing people. And one of those forensic chemists, he's thinking, well, maybe fluoride, is something that could be consistent throughout bone. But then, any gas that we train the dogs on, they could false indicate on that single gas. So to kind of come back, I'm sorry I have to give very long.
No, I like that. Trust me, I'm a total information geek. So the more
okay, yeah, it's so hard to go black and white, right? There's so much gray, in the midst of all of this. But we've had some, where we're trying to get to the science of it. But even in court, if someone has to testify, my response to them is you can't go through what exactly did your dog indicate on. I mean, it indicated on the odor of human remains, right? And those are going to vary over time. But I'm very fortunate. I think one reason that my dogs have been successful is because of the opportunities. I get a lot of cases. And so that's a lot of deployment. So my probabilities of success are going to go up because of the amount of cases, but also because I'm fortunate to be able to train these dogs that I have and my colleague has on the various levels of human remains. And so I think people that are doing this or trying to deploy these dogs need to ask deeper questions, so that they fully understand. I was on a long conversation for NCMEC, for the National Center for Missing Exploited Children yesterday with a federal agent who, I was trying to explain why it would be difficult to use a cadaver dog in a swampy area from a case that was from 1977, and why that. That there may be people out there that's like, oh, yeah, they can do it, but trying to explain the level of difficulty that's involved in that and the probability in a swampy area that a dog could false indicate. And, false indicating, that's basically when a dog is saying that there's human remains, that they've detected when in fact it's not human remains. That has some serious consequences, and we want people to take that very seriously, because it was just like I explained to him, well, what's your next step? Because you're going to have to drain this whole pond, and, you better be sure that dog is accurate before you go, because even when you get down into the mud, once the pond's drained, how are we going to effectively, exhume looking for small disarticulated bone in that mud. So, I think, it's all a little bit more complicated than, people want to just like post on the internet. And
I've got a question about that.
yeah.
So this is what I was thinking about it. So when you have a dog, because you're in Carolina, is it do the gases change regionally where you have a different environment, different weather system, it's humid versus dry, and all that? Were they just as successful does it matter with the environment? Because being decomposed would probably be different in different environments. So do they have to be trained in those environments, or does that not affect that?
Oh, Mark, I think that's a very smart question.
Write that down.
Yeah,
Everybody heard that.
yeah,
Smart
write that
question.
down. Yeah, that's a good one, Mark. My point blank answer is going to be yes, it matters. And I've even I did a study here at the university. I haven't published it, but I did a study here at the university where we took the same donor, and it was the rib bones from the same donor, and then I went and got a variety of different soils. 5 different types of soils. I got sand, I got riverbank, I got the red clay that we have, in Western North Carolina. I got the black rich soil, and I even used, oh gosh, I can't think of the word of it right now. It's a manure. I think it's called black cow, but it's just a fertilizer. And my colleague and I, we dug a hole, the same amount of depth. So I think it was 12 inches deep, 12 inches wide, a square. And then we put that soil in there, and then we put, the same donor, so there would be no difference in the variability, right? So that we're trying to use solid science. We put the same donor ribs in each, and then we covered it with chicken wire, and then we covered it back up. And then, during one of the classes, I ran all the dogs on it. And my hypothesis was that, sand may even be different than
Black cow.
different types of soil. Yeah, because, it's going to mask it, but it's also going to keep it from aerating as much. And so, yes, Mark, I think you're right that, the region and the environment's going to matter, especially with buried. But even with bone and how it decomposes, when, you're in oxygen and water come together under the ground, in a lot of areas, that's not, the body's not going to last long, I mean, it is ashes to ashes and dust to dust, in the right time. If you're on the West Coast, and you're in places like Arizona, places where it's a drier climate, then those bones are going to last longer. So if you just think about, what weather and humidity and rain and, all of that does over time, then you've asked a very good question. And it's not even just about like the VOCs or the climate, it's about how and what you train your dogs in.
Right.
I mean, I'm telling you, I hate going, no disrespect to Florida or very, very hot climates, but, I live in the mountains, Nantahala National Forest. I live in the mountains of Western North Carolina. So that's where I do most of all my training. And so when I'm deployed on a case to Florida, or, we were on a child case out in Idaho that we worked a week on, it was 105-degree weather. My dogs are not used to that.
Right.
So if I take my dogs down to Florida or, hot climates, I mean, I have to guard so much more, to take care of their health because they're not conditioned. It's just like a human being. And when we have people coming from flatlands to, the U.S. Park Service or the mountains that I work in, I mean, to be quite frank, the handler nor the dogs are conditioned to hike up mountains.
Altitude or walk in the hills, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've done 17 miles, and our dogs are in a day, and our dogs are usually, when we do the mapping, and we put collars, GPS collars on our dogs, and we always map our cases, but they're doing double the work we are. So climate not only affects, the human decomposition process, but it also affects the ability of the canine and the canine handler in their strengths. And, I'm always telling everybody our job is to train our canines where they would work for anybody, where they just want to do the work, right?
Right.
And they don't need us. Because when they need us too much, I call that a codependency. And I don't want a dog looking back at its handler. I don't want a dog relying on its handler. And too many times people can cue their dog by simply stopping their feet. I want a dog to, work independent, but our job is to set that dog up for success, and our dog is to, protect them as much as we possibly can. And that's doing a lot of training and variation, and to consider the weaknesses, the strengths and weaknesses of where that dog has been trained.
Well, what made me think about that was I was thinking about you were talking about Maui with the, obviously with the fire, which is the reason why you're out there. Would that still, with that, because that's a different weather out there too. It's an island with, it's humid and all that. So the difference between a fire of decompensation and one in the mountains of North Carolina, would that be a different smell too, or would it be similar and they'd have no problem with it other than moving around?
No, it's a different smell.
Yeah, yeah. So they almost have to know that environment then.
Yes.
Be trained on it at least.
Yes, Mark, you hit it.
Okay, cool.
For real, 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 for real.
And we'll be right back. We are supported by Preveted, providing stem cell therapy for pets.
As a pet lover, did you know your pet can benefit from the incredible healing power of stem cell therapy? Prep Therapy offers a groundbreaking solution taken right from your pet's own blood. Say goodbye to joint pain, arthritis, kidney and liver conditions, and more. They'll experience faster recovery, increased vitality, and extended quality of life without the need for surgery or harmful drugs. Put the wag back in their tail and discover Prep Therapy today at PrepVet.com. Save 10% with promo code FurRealPodcast, covered by most pet insurance.
One of the things I read, again, everything I say I read, most of it I read on the internet. So we're going to put the caveat there, maybe, maybe not. Okay, how's that?
Okay. All right, thank you.
I was really surprised to see that they really professionally weren't using, again, back in the days it was HRD, human remains detection, now cadaver dogs, but they really didn't start doing it until the 70s, which shocked me. I would have thought it was, I knew that they had people that weren't professionally trained and all that prior to that, but it really didn't become a thing until the 70s. Is that a correct date? Let's go with that one first. And then I'm shocked that it hasn't been going along that as much longer than that.
I have an idea it's gone on much, much longer than that.
Okay. Thank you, Internet.
Yeah, I have an idea that, even military dogs and, some of the stuff that they've been doing, for a long time, the documentation of it, we think we know a start date, but I could introduce you to a colleague, Edwin Grant, and his wildlife buddy, Mike Stevens. They, started bloodhounds for North Carolina Wildlife. They started that program a lot of years ago.
Okay.
So, I know that they were running bloodhounds, and that was certainly for fugitive hunts. But then they switched to cadaver. And cadaver was first, the term, but now HRD is one that's used most often. They've been doing it for, a long time. And I will say, and this goes back to, and I don't mean to jump around, but
Please do.
it made me think of his bloodhounds. Bloodhounds, they've got that long olfactory system.
Sure.
And oh my goodness, they want to work, right? Most of them, they want to work. But sometimes they're limited to, and this is going to upset probably some bloodhound handlers, and I don't mean to do that. This is just my experience. Sometimes they're better on a lead with tracking and trailing rather than, the ability to pop them off lead and let them just air scent and go wherever they want to. it's kind of like the wonderful beagle, a great hunting dog, but you'll hear a lot of people complain about, man, that dog will just be gone, right? And I don't know when it's coming back. So it also ties into the training, and the type of dog it is, because, bloodhounds would be my preferred for tracking and trailing, and less preferred for cadaver. And I think, we really, really wanted to talk about it, we would know why. Now, what has happened, and I think because of the internet and maybe, I don't know, we used to be the only facility here at Western Carolina University that was using our cadaver facility to train human remains detection dogs. Now we see trainers popping up everywhere, and then we also see that it's kind of this trendy thing. I don't know the proper term to say for it, but it's like, oh, okay, I'll do that.
Right.
I'll do that. So I think, certainly the internet and things that are promoted that way, and have pushed this into notoriety, pushed this into popularity. And again, one reason that I was willing to come on board with you today is to talk about, this is serious stuff,
Well, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second, because I want to talk. I read this article that you had done at Hurricane Helene, and and I know we're on the same page right here, but you address a lot of the issues, and I think this is for the people who are listening. They really need to understand what's happening, because there's a lot of people that are well-wishers that are out there that want to help and do these things with these dogs, but ultimately ends up being a distraction and can cause a lot of problems, aside from the people that are the grifters that are trying to make money off of the things. Can you get into why it's dangerous, even though you're a well-wisher and you think your dog can do this, why this isn't really the best choice, and why you really need to go with dogs that are properly trained and that are experts in what they do?
Okay, Mark, you said 1 hour. I need 3.
Well, yeah, I'm terrible. I told you.
that question, is definitely opening up, and it's going to unfortunately open up some emotion for me. So I'm going to try to break that down into some different categories. Let's talk about what you said first on the self-deployments.
Right.
That's what we call, those that, just kind of bring their dogs to a disaster. I will tell you, things that I witnessed myself, and I know for a fact, are disheartening, because like we had people that would just take their regular dogs out, or, they had whatever type of dog, and then they go, oh, well, my dog, is telling me there's human remains in there. And then they would, what we call, drop a flag, leave a flag, and alerting everybody else that there's human remains there. So I'll talk more about how it derails, from the mission oftentimes. But the first thing is the safety of that handler and that dog, because it was just like Hurricane Helene. And I did send out, I don't Facebook, I don't do social media. Sometimes through Western, we'll get something out through them. But I did that time, because, I was seeing how dangerous it was for not only the handlers and not only the dogs, but, they're putting rescuers and first responders in additional danger, because when your infrastructure's down after disaster, just like happened with Hurricane Helene, there's no extra resources to come in when you get into trouble, right? I mean, and if you're thinking, well, I can go down by this river, I'm going to search this riverbank. Well, when you get into trouble and our infrastructure's down, who's going to come and help you, right? So number one, it's a safety factor for maybe some really good-hearted people, that want to make a difference and want to help. But you'll see those folks that really know what they're doing go, nobody self-deploys. And we saw a lot of self-deployments. And I can speak to Hurricane Helene because I was over there a long time. But we saw a lot of self-deployments. So yes, it's a safety factor, and then it's additional stress on limited resources that we don't have. And, that was I mean, it was some pretty hairy stuff that we went through. I mean, the dog that I used, she's an amazing athletic German Shepherd, solid black, imported from Slovakia. I mean, she's just a beast. But I still did not anticipate that the rivers we were rafting would switch from a smooth, flat river to Class 3 rapids. And I have videos of doing this where we're sitting here going, "We're in it now," right? I mean, we're in it now, and there's nobody to call. I mean, we don't even have service, So, we had dogs, that handlers that came in that shouldn't be here because they weren't trained. And then we even have dogs that were quote unquote trained that were really derailing searches. And I can talk a little more about that as well. But, if you have a practice that, the philosophy is like, well, my dog is going to smell human remains and then I'm going to leave a flag and then I'm going to keep going on, that flag that you left suggests to everybody else, the excavators, the backhoe operators, the people that have to get in there, well, you told us there's a body in there, so we need to get in there. I mean, we had somebody that was in one of our classes that I didn't think should be responding in the hurricane because I knew the quality of the dog, that he left a flag in this county. And I know personally, that he shared that he felt his dog had indicated here on this 30-foot debris pile. That family had to wait 2 or 3 days for a team to come and pull that 30-foot debris pile apart with heavy equipment, the whole time thinking their loved one was in there, and when in fact it was an animal. And that's just a level of. And then this person posted all over the internet that they found the body, and there was several of these situations where I felt like we were double victimizing
The families.
the victims, because of unprofessionalism. And some people were here for just hero glory. They just wanted to yeah, I'm here and, my dog's done this and this, and then turn right around and post it on Facebook. And, that was heart-wrenching to me and to a lot of others. I think. But then we also had a third category that were complete frauds.
Right.
I mean, complete frauds. And I've actually presented to state emergency management, and I've tried to get it to anyone who would listen, letting folks know about some of the frauds that I came in contact with. And then I started watching Facebook and even contacted GoFundMe and Facebook to go, this stuff isn't real, but I got nowhere with it because basically anybody can donate to a GoFundMe and there's no accountability of where that money went. And you can look on the internet. There's one woman that in day 2, she said her dog recovered 100 bodies by itself, and then she flagged 600 more bodies. Mark, only 108 were found in total, but she went and told, posted all over Facebook that her dog in 2 days found 100 and then had identified where 600 more bodies were and created a GoFundMe account, and people were donating to that. So, again, one reason this forum was an opportunity to also share that people, it's horrific that people would do that. They continue to get away with it because there's very little. I've gone to sheriffs and, different people to be like, hey, what can we do about this? And it's like, well, if there's not a victim to come forward, we don't have a case. And I'm like, but the victims don't know that this was fraudulent. And so, I walked away. There were a lot of good things that happened, amazing, beautiful stories that happened in Hurricane Helene. But some of the heart-wrenching stuff that I saw with the canines, it's hard. It's hard.
Well, I mean, it's a hard business to begin with anyways because of responsibility. And then you've got people that, again, I do believe that some people have best intentions and they're out there just trying to help. But
absolutely.
And best intentions aren't always the best things, all right? So what's happened is they're out there with the people that are trained to do it and affecting them, and they're not being able to be effective. But the one that's really heart-wrenching for me is the family that wants closure or something, and then they get false hope, and then they find out it's not. That's terrible.
Well, exactly. And we're also putting our first responders at unnecessary risk.
Right, all that. I mean,
All that.
it's a much
Yeah.
bigger picture than just thinking, oh, well, they're just out there, thinking their dog's a smart dog, and it turns out.
I mean, I even watched, my colleague eyewitness law enforcement cadaver dogs that were indicating on on animal bones and being rewarded. So that's a handler error that's hard to overcome, because once you've rewarded that dog, it's operant conditioning. It's all the B.F. Skinner stuff, right?
Right.
And once you've rewarded that dog on animal bones, well, now guess what you've got?
Yeah, I got a dog.
You've got a dog
Yeah.
an alert
Yeah.
on animal bones, right? And so we also had that, going on, and some people were like, well, at least it gave you like a location. And I sort of could see that, but I just saw how many, because I also went back over there well after, and again, I never went anywhere where I wasn't directly asked by law enforcement.
Well, there's the point right there. Unless you're asked, you shouldn't go.
Right. And there is, like, for example, I mean, you may have a federal agency like FEMA come in, but it's still ultimately the sheriff's jurisdiction. I mean, those are his people, that's his town, that's his community, or the chief of police or law enforcement, and fire. So we like to say that, disasters are local, because in the end, it's your local people. And that was the beauty. And, I have a saying that, there's light and darkness, and there's beauty even in death, and all the stuff that happened in Hurricane Helene. You saw so much beauty with neighbors coming together and helping each other, and but yeah, people need to be officially requested, and not self-deploy. And I want to kick this back on the agencies as well. I mean, law enforcement has a level of responsibility to vet those that they put their reputations on.
Right.
Those that they say, okay, we can trust this dog. You better know who you're bringing in. And that's why I like portfolios better than certifications, because I want, like, if somebody calls me, I want to give them law enforcement agency contact that they can say, yes, her and her dogs found this body for us, and validate it that way than just a certificate that's, out there. Because some of the certificates that we're seeing right now, it's really disheartening, because not only will they allow that handler to bring their quote unquote own source, so maybe it's this bone they've been working all this time, and quite frankly, there's no way that your own human odor is not on that bone. It's not just pure, bone, the odor of bone.
Right.
They'll allow them to bring their own bone. And in some of these certifications, they're allowing the handlers to even put out their own hides. That is just ridiculous. But, people are believing and trusting this, and they go. And that's why I said either they don't know what they don't know, or they simply want to get a certificate so that they have it. I mean, I got upset in the Texas flood, because
Katrina, or which one was that? Katrina was New Orleans. What was I got?
yeah, no. This was the latest one that happened with the children's camp.
Uh-huh. Oh, in San Marcos River.
Right.
Yeah.
That there were people were using individually, because I got contacted about a handler that had turned in our little piece of paper that we give after our courses that say they participated in this many hours of training. Is not a certificate, but they actually use that to claim it was a certificate to get down into the Texas. And, that circled back around to me, and that was disappointing, so much so that I had to go to the university and say, make sure there's no word that says certificate on our training. So it's better that law enforcement finds out what cases they've worked and what cases they've recovered bodies, and they validate it that way. I show pictures when I train new techs at NCMEC or law enforcement or CART teams or whatever it is, of a handler that showed up with a big marijuana leaf on her sweatshirt, and that's how she represented the police agency. So it's not just about, the dogs and the training, it's about how we present ourselves professionally. And agencies need to be taxed with validating, just, is this somebody you really want to put your whole reputation on? And that's what I tell handlers too. I've got a dog right now that I can't put my reputation on. It's picked up something called blastomycosis, and I won't go into what that is, but dog handlers who have hunting dogs might want to look it up. But she contracted blastomycosis, and she's an amazing dog that's been very successful, but I can't deploy her right now because I can't trust her nose. So, we also only want to put our reputations on the canines that we know that we can trust.
Right. And the dogs have to go through, hundreds of hours just to get to the point where they're functional, but they have to continue to have training all the time, right? Is that how it works?
Yeah, I'm always like, okay, let's step back and punt, because as soon as you think you've got a dog that's like perfect, it's like your child when you're wanting to show them off or something. It's like, oh dang it, and so what I always teach, it doesn't matter the level of class that we're teaching or the level of dog. It's all about foundation. Everything's about foundation, and people want to skip too quickly. I'm always saying, don't advance to the next stage before you're ready, before your dog's ready. And people want to skip steps. They want to get to that end product. And we'll have every dog, that'll get lazy over time. My best dog ever, the golden retriever, she'd get so lazy, and I just have to, because she was like, no, I don't have to train, I don't have to practice. I'm a game day girl, and just having to tighten her up in practice that nope, you're gonna put your nose on Sorth, you're not gonna leave it until I give you permission to leave it, and this is how we're gonna do it. So it's always going back to foundation, always, and it's always going back and tightening things up. And that's one thing I think my colleague and I are pretty good about, is because it's like, look, this is going to happen. It's okay. How do we step backwards, tighten this up, and then we'll move forward? It's like you do with any child,
Sure.
or anything. And there are also developmental stages where their brain's not going to be in it. And then, we have to deal with dogs going into heat,
Right.
dogs that aren't fixed. We have to deal with all this. I try to explain to people in my classes, it's kind of like this, because if you had a police dog, a bite work dog, a patrol dog, a military dog, and that dog's job was to go attack and apprehend that offender, right? You wouldn't want it to stop and mark along the way, right? You wouldn't want it to just, I'm running for him, but wait, I smell, cat urine over here, so I'm going to have
Yeah.
to stop and go check this out. It would be unheard of. That dog wouldn't make it, right? Because, it's not going to be a dog that you
Right.
can depend on. And we can't have that in the HRD world either. They need to be good, working, ethical, working dogs that do their task, and it's hard. A lot of them want to divert, and that's what you have to do in training. I'm always saying, no, you don't want to deal with that dog wanting to mark when we have HRD out. Let's tighten that up outside of it. And a long answer for a short question, Mark.
Well, I always say that things, because you can look at it and see, no, the dog's just smelling around doing stuff, but things that look easy are usually a lot harder than they are, and there's a lot more involved in that. And obviously, everything that you're saying, it's a detailed, very specific thing that needs to be done to do it properly, ultimately.
Exactly. And I'm so grateful for the people that do it that way, Mark.
Well, thank God we have people like yourself doing that. You think about, it's a horrible thing to lose any family member, but at least from a standpoint of having closure or whatever else to do that. It's a horrible thing, but at least there's a positive thing at the end. If you can call it positive, at least you get to have some closure.
Oh, Mark, I'm going to be honest with you and make a statement here that I may regret, but the hardest for me is when I can't find them. And you know, and you said people like, I mean, I train all the time, I deploy all the time, but there's that what if, what if we missed it? What if the wind was blowing the different
Right.
direction than we searched and the odor's being blown, away from us instead of towards us? And, a lot of times we have one shot, and trying to lay down at night when you think, what if I missed it? That's the hard part, when you can reunite, you know, a loved one, with their family, or you can help close a murder case. You have peace in that. In a way, the hell comes when you can't, when you don't know if you were as good as you could have been, right?
Right, and for the families, at least they get to start moving forward instead of wondering all the time too. It's a horrible situation, but it's the best case that you can have at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that brings me to another thing that I'm starting to see, unfortunately, is people going to the families and saying, hey, I got a cadaver dog and I can do this, and you can pay me this amount of money, or you don't have to pay me, or we'll take donations, or whatever the case may be. I had a case 2 weeks ago where state law enforcement contacted me from another state, and that had happened, and it just broke my heart, because I'm like, they got that mother's hopes up, and I'm not so sure it wasn't just a bunch of BS. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
I don't think it was someone with good intentions either, and that's heart wrenching. That, well. Anyway, I won't get started on that one. It's been an hour, Mark. I told you I might need longer.
Okay, yeah, well, I always try to forewarn people. If I just like talking until we get done talking, and I like to talk. So,
Okay. All right. Well, you can kind of tell I do too, and I'm a little bit passionate about this
no, a
stuff.
little bit, a lot, but that's a good thing. So to kind of finish this up, is there anything that we haven't covered? Any messages that you want to get out there? Of course, for everybody listening, all the links and stuff and that is in the description. But anything that as we finish this up, anything that you want to that I didn't ask or we didn't think to talk about that maybe be helpful for the people listening?
I don't know. I think we've probably covered it. I know I've kind of sounded daunting at times, but I just want people, because I know that you've got a lot of probably canine listeners that think, oh man, what a great noble cause, and I think my dog could do this. But there's also sports that they can do. AKC does scent work.
Right.
I don't personally love it when I have the AKC scent work folks come, just say, well, we're doing this, so we thought we would do cadaver, because it's so much more in depth. I mean, it's much more than, you have to know search theory, you have to know scent theory, you have to be conditioned to understand how to approach. You have to have the ability to work with agencies and know when to stand up and when to step back. And, it's a lot that goes into it. So there is a lot of different types of scent work that can be done out there. I love shed work. I love truffle hunting. And, there's a lot of things that people can do to use their canines and have a blast with. And quite frankly, if they've gotten themselves a working breed, that dog needs a job.
Right.
Those listeners are probably saying, yep, I thought it was a good idea to get a Malinois when that amazing movie come out. And now I live in an apartment and this Malinois is tearing up everything. Well, that dog needs work. It needs a job. And, so there are things. I'm always saying, just play hide and seek. Like, teach your dog how to, find your own children. One of the reasons I went into this is because my knucklehead daughter, who is too much like her knucklehead mother, and likes to go out by herself and do the Appalachian Trail, or go camping by herself, or go on these long hikes. And I'm like, by gosh, I'm going to have a dog that can find her. So I started out with scent articles with her, and it gave me a peace of mind. So that's something that families can have fun, just have fun doing. So, give their great canines a job, but keep it in perspective on the reality of what that job should be.
And the responsibility of that job. Your job, there's such a big responsibility in so many ways that I don't think that we always, again, I always use the term best intentions because that's the majority of people, but at some point you don't realize what you're committing to, because there is a huge responsibility there.
There is a huge responsibility. There is.
Okay, so to make light on a heavy subject.
Oh no, Mark, is this a joke?
Yeah, this is a joke time. So, as I told you, I'm going to tell a joke, and for everybody listening, I told Lisa I was going to tell a joke versus her and having to do one. But as I always tell everybody, as I know you're cringing if you listen all the time, you hear these silly jokes I say, I'm sure you have a better one. So if you have grandkids, nieces, nephews, or whatever, and you want to be on the show, I promise you, if you email me at mkyleforrealpodcast.com, I will put you on the show. I will gladly not have to tell a joke anytime, and also put everybody through the torture. So Lisa, here's my joke for the day. And it's related to what we talked about. So why did the cadaver dog get promoted in his job?
Mark, why do I feel nervous all of a sudden? But I'm going to say, why did the cadaver dog get promoted?
Okay, because he was always digging up new leads. Yeah, not too bad.
All right, Mark, good job. Good job. I have to say, rather than laughing, I just feel really relieved because I didn't know how you were going to make a joke with this topic. So nicely done.
Well, thank you. It still stinks, but it's still good. Anyway.
Oh no, that one might have even been a little better.
Well, thank you so much. But more importantly for you, I know you're really busy. I mean, I know you get pulled left and right and all over the places, and we had some little technical issues and all that, but I so appreciate you being on. This is a subject I really wanted to cover, and it's always nice to have an educator too, and somebody with a big heart. So thanks so much, Lisa, for being on the show.
Mark, you're very welcome. Thanks for asking me.
And then for everybody else that's out there listening, as I always say, without you guys, I wouldn't be able to get guests like this. But more importantly, I so appreciate you, but please keep listening, pass the word on, tell more people, subscribe, do all the weird stuff you're supposed to do to listen to this thing. And also, again, if you have ideas for the podcast, again, use the email. It's in the description. Again, mkyleforrealpodcast.com. But most importantly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening. For real.
That concludes this episode of For Real with your host, Mark Kyle. For previous and future episodes of For Real, listen via all major podcast streaming sites.